Well, most employees, they look at that and they just see that as a joke. Because if I get the stretch goal, it's just going to be pushed out anyway. And there's no win in it for me. But if they choose the metric, and if they pick what they want to do, then they pursue the win. It's theirs. It's not the boss's. It's theirs. I'm excited to introduce to you my latest podcast, Run It Like You Own It. In this podcast, we're going to explain how you can use the science of human behavior to gamify the workplace.
The Run It Like You Own It podcast with Wouter.
Welcome back to Run It Like You Own It. My name is Wouter. Today I have with me Pete Sametz. And today we're going to talk about how we gamify the workplace and how we challenge employees to want to do better. Now, you and I think we've worked together for about 30 years now.
1994, Wouter. That was the first time.
Absolutely frightening when I think about it.
I know. I think you're calling me a veteran. I've been involved in various industries as CEO, nonprofit even. And, fundamental to every executive and just about any company is how do you improve performance and how do you get your frontline workers to be engaged and understand the value they add to the company, getting them to think that they run it like they own it and that pride of ownership comes through in results. So we've had various successes working with your various firms that you've been involved with, but the principles are there, and I think we're going to talk about some of them today here. So this will be great.
Well, that often surprises an awful lot of people because we think that people go to work and they go head down and dig into their work and work real hard all day long. But we know when we say that out loud that that's not quite true. I often ask people, what do you think the average worker's productivity is in a day? So if 100% would reflect what they could do, not on some heroic basis, but on a sustainable day-to-day basis, what level do you think they actually work at?
Well, I thought I knew the answer at one time, which was like 50 or 60%, but I think you're going to educate me differently.
I'd still call you a little bit of an optimist. And it's funny because the closer that people are to the front line, the lower the number they give. But actually the number is less than a third. It's around 31, 32%. And all these stats are pre-COVID stats. And the indications are that the number has dropped even further post-COVID.
What do you think the reason for such a low number is? And I assume there's been lots of studies and lots of academic work on this topic.
I think it's mostly because people really don't care about their job. The people that are on their front line have the same DNA than those in the boardroom. But those in the boardroom are focused and they're excited and their decisions get listened to and they make a difference. And so they tend to focus a lot harder. On the floor, if you're putting the same widget together time after time, you just get bored. But that same guy that's working on the floor, when he or she goes home and plays their video game, they're focused and interested and fun, and they work real hard. And often they'll go without sleep and without food for hours on end, without a break. And they're paying to play the video games. They're getting paid to do their work.
So the engagement they have with the video games, why doesn't that translate to the workforce? What do you need to do?
The video games are remarkably addictive. You constantly get fed while playing a video game. You constantly get fed a series of dopamine shots. The dopamine shots come in high scores, clever sounds, interesting sounds, great graphics, primary colors popping out on the screen, leveling up. In essence, playing a video game, you get a dopamine shot all the time. It's a constant feed. At work, you often get none. Do you really care how many widgets you produce that day? Did your boss actually provide you any feedback? Do you have any interest in the outcome of your day's performance? It's quite the opposite.
What is dopamine?
Oh, dopamine is the ultimate pleasure drug. It's when people take heroin or do illegal drugs, really what they're doing is just shortcutting trying to get dopamine. Dopamine is why we have sex. It's why we eat. It's why we go to war. It's why we do almost everything we do. It's the lifeblood of the activity of the human being. And it's why we get out of bed in the morning. It's for those shots of dopamine.
So we're willing to go harder for getting shots of dopamine along the way.
Absolutely. That's the one drug that you want to have on your work site. Absolutely.
So is there an element of gamifying the workplace to get those shots of dopamine? Or is that the right term?
I love the term gamifying, but I often get people kind of give me this inquisitive look as, what do you talk about gamifying the workplace? We can't turn our workplace into a video game, and you can't. But let's make it just a little bit simpler. Let's think about golf. I mean, you don't get this constant shot of dopamine every time you take a shot of the golf ball. You know, at the end of a golf game, there might be 3 or 4 shots that you're proud of, and you're going back for that. But just those little few intermittent shots are enough to keep you going and spending, in essence, thousands of dollars to play golf. We don't need a constant stream of dopamine to keep us engaged. We just need a little bit. And when we play games, when we set up sports, we get that intermittent basis, and that's good enough. And so when I talk about gamifying the workplace, I'm talking about is creating enough to create enough of a stream that people are interested and focused and want to be there and want to do the work.
It's funny what you say about golf, because I'm a terrible golfer and I don't golf very often, but I can tell you that I used to say there's a good day when I got a par. And that's out of 18 holes.
Yeah, I way back when I used to joke about a good day is when I found more golf balls than I lost. You know, that's what I wanted to do. So we got to be a little bit careful with the golf analogy, because some people play golf not for the score, not for the good shot. They play golf to get out of the house, to get away from the kids and the work and the stress. So if that's the reason why you're going, of course, your score is going to be a little bit different, or your metric is going to be a little bit different. But the principle still stands. It is, why are we doing what are we doing? And what are we getting out of it? And then if you can simulate that in the workplace, people want to be at work. They want to contribute. They want to participate.
So how do you go about getting workers focused on improving their productivity? Is it something management can force on them? And I think I know the answer, but what's the best way to do this to get them?
So a lot of managers try to force it. And in essence, what they often do is they go backwards. And I love the example of stretch goals. You know, we're going to have some kind of metric, and we're going to go to the employee and give them a stretch goal. And we were taught as managers that, don't give them a goal that's too easy to achieve, because when they get it, they're going to stop. So you want to give them a stretch goal. It's really, really hard, and maybe they're going to get it, and maybe they're not. Well, most employees, they look at that and they just see that as a joke, because if I get the stretch goal, it's just going to be pushed out anyway, and there's no win in it for me. But if they choose the metric, and if they pick what they want to do, then they pursue the win. It's theirs. It's not the boss's. It's theirs. And then if they hit the target, like when you play golf, and if you're hitting a par every time that you're playing golf, do you quit playing golf? It's like, I nailed it. I'm done. No, it's like, okay, now I want to get 2 pars.
Yeah.
Or now I want to get 3 pars. Or maybe one day I'm going to get a birdie or something. You will stretch the target yourself.
Right.
And it'll be something that'll be tough, but ultimately, hopefully, achievable. And so managers are taught to do the wrong thing in the workplace. Having a manager give a stretch goal to an employee that really comes out of the air, that's pointless, is actually driving them backwards. The employees can say, I can't do that. There's no value in it. I give up.
So if you get the employee thinking they're competing against themselves, they're competing against the last target that they did.
That's exactly it. Figure out your personal best. Nail your personal best. When they hit their personal best, get excited about it. Be thrilled about it. Don't worry about the target. Let them tell you what they want to do and what they want to achieve. But there's a legacy associated with that too, because we've all seen it in workplaces where we put metrics in place. We usually have a whole bunch of metrics in the workplace. And when guys don't hit them, guys or gals don't hit them, we give them shit. And when they hit them, well, that's what they're paid for. That's what we expect from them. So they certainly don't get any positive reinforcement from hitting them. And so it doesn't take long for employees to associate metrics with punishment. And so they do everything possible to get rid of the metrics. You look at a professional athlete, that's all they look at is metrics. But they don't look at it as punishment. They look at it as marks of achievement. Look what I can do now. Look what I can lift now. Look how fast I ran that race. And for them, it's all about positive recognition. It's not about.
So in some ways, the management targeting everyone has to have a budget, but in terms of stretch targets and some of these other things that work their way down to the first frontline workers, they can in fact be disincentivizing and not, and they don't get any positive reinforcement along the way. So it sort of defeats the purpose in a lot of ways.
I'd proffer that probably 98% of metrics that are out there in the workplace are disincentivizing to the employee. Now, that doesn't mean you don't need them. You need them for budgeting purposes. You need them for planning purposes. You need them to report to the CRA. You need metrics. But when we talk about human performance, it might physically be the same metric, but the way you bring it up and the way you introduce it is completely different. Let the employee decide what the metric is. Let them decide how they're going to measure success. And don't be concerned about them picking something that doesn't make sense. They know what the goals of the company are. They know what we have to achieve. They're going to pick something relevant. It's not a problem. Everyone's worried about that. It's just not an issue.
Well, I certainly think I've seen in my career that you will have the field staff, for example, putting together a budget, or the refinery staff, or whatever operational entity we're talking about in a company, and but at the level of the field management, they'll be basically deciding a lot of this. They don't really necessarily include the guys working for them as much as you'd like. And then, of course, the irony of the whole situation is when they do present it, and then the management in Calgary, for example, is looking at it, or in front of a board of directors, they tweak it. They raise it up again. They say, well, this is what they came about. We can do better, And, of course, bonuses and other things for executives and senior management are based on exceeding goals and performances, right? So there is this dichotomy of what you're trying to do to get better performance, but how it kind of working through layers doesn't always get to the right place.
There's a certain irony that's built into that as well, is that if you have a fairly complex job, when you add bonuses or incentive pay to it, you actually drive performance backwards. It actually hurts performance. It absolutely does. And there's a whole bunch of studies that have been done, and they're easy to replicate. But when you put financial incentives in place in front of a complex job, performance actually drops. You take away creativity. You're introducing stress and taking away creativity. Now, if you have a simple job, a repetitive job, you do a pay for performance or something like that, then they'll help. But quite often, the addition of bonuses complicates performance. It doesn't simplify performance. And it's counterintuitive, but it's absolutely true.
What's the system or the process that Forefront goes through in terms of working with field staff to evolve them or get them to the place where they're now looking for that dopamine hit, or looking to improve performance on their own, or beat their best game, or beat their best score?
So one of the things that we have to overcome, we work from the bottom up. Absolutely work from the bottom.
So bottom-up approach.
Definitely a bottom-up approach. Traditional improvement initiatives, they start at the top and they get diluted as they go down. And usually there's the momentum is out of the program by the time it gets to the front line. It's your front line that makes your money. It's the people pulling the wrenches, pulling the levers, turning the knobs that make the money. And they're usually the least beneficiaries of these improvement programs. We literally work from the bottom up. And so
what do you mean by you guys work from the bottom up. You're in the field. You're in the
Yeah,
office.
we're literally in the field, wearing the same coveys and the same PPE as the folks in the field. We work shoulder to shoulder with the frontline supervisors, and we're talking and participating with the guys pulling the lever. Because really, at the end of the day, you can change the name of a supervisor to a team lead, and give them a different flip chart and a different a fancy little diary book or whatnot. But at the end of the day, if you got the same operator going on the same well and pulling the same wrench, you're going to get the exact same results. Nothing is going to change. So it's not the titles, it's the way people think that are going to change things. And we have to change some of the legacy thinking of the frontline supervisors. So instead of getting into a telling mode, this is what I want you to do, or this is how or what I want you to do, what you really want to do is get the frontline guys to be results focused. Our goal is to minimize pressures. Our goal is to do these kinds of things. And they're at that equipment all the time. They know what it smells like. They know what it's supposed to sound like. They see what the opportunities are. And they will come up with the wins to make it better. And you get excited about the wins. You reward them for the wins, not with money. You reward them with the wins off of pride, off of satisfaction, out of a challenge completed.
Is it competitive in terms of between individuals or between shifts, or how do you manage that aspect of it?
So I like the competitive nature of it, but it's a little bit of a double-edged sword. You have to be a little bit careful. So it's not uncommon if you pit, if you make it competitive between shifts, that at some point you get to a point where one shift literally sabotages another shift. And
you've seen that?
Oh, all the time. And when I was just talking yesterday to someone about, they were working in a lumber mill, and they call it creaming the pile. What they did is they took the big logs out of the log pile, and they ran the big logs so you could get good production, and then leave all the small logs for night shift, and they can't do anything. And so it could be as subtle as, sabotaging a shift like that. But, short of that, creating a healthy competition is fun. But the easiest competition is just get them to compete against themselves. Like, don't try to beat Jack. You're never going to be Jack. Jack's performing at 95%. We all know it, Jack. And we know we're not going to beat Jack. But maybe I can beat what I did yesterday.
Yeah.
And that's the goal. Hey,
yeah.
Wouter, you try and beat what you did yesterday. And then, hey, I can do that. And I'll get the same win, the same shots of dopamine as though I beat Jack. And then my levels will go up. And what you'll see is the whole crew is everyone will just start shifting up.
So, in every environment you have top performers, medium performers, and bottom performers. And of course, in a lot of the industries that you deal with, they probably bottom performer. It's like the old car dealerships where salesman of the month gets fired, right? I mean, it doesn't mean there's any understanding of why or what, or maybe he doesn't care. But you see that in most of the industries you deal with. So what happens to the various levels of performance if you start to get them going for dopamine hits?
So there is, it's kind of a really crude rule of thumb. I always believe that your bottom performers are going to do better than your mean once the process is going. They're just going to step up that much. You have to remember that, most people are working at a third of what they're capable of working at. And so, if I talk to an executive, a prospect, and I ask them, what would it mean for you to have a 10% improvement in effort? They get really excited, and yet there's 300% available. And so getting 10% is it's almost comical. It's going from 33 to 34%, or 31 to 34%. And from our perspective, it's almost comical, and yet they think that that's the
because they haven't seen it before.
Because they haven't seen it.
They haven't seen why.
And they haven't seen why. But we've been in multiple sites, not just a one-off. We've been in multiple sites where the same people with the same equipment, same shift structure, has literally put out double the product than they did previous. Nothing new. It's because they want to win. They want to celebrate. They want to have fun. They want to be challenged. They want to participate. And that's really the goal. So when you say what happens to the poor performer, a lot of people say, man, if I just got rid of POTS, if I just got rid of my poor performer, life would be great. Well, it's not, because as soon as you get rid of POTS, there's another POTS. There will always be a poor performer on your side. So your trick is to get the whole mean to move up.
Yeah.
And everyone will. The top performers will move up, the median performers will move up, and the bottom performers will move up. And if you truly have someone that doesn't want to perform, that's functionally window tribe, they'll self-eliminate because they don't want to be there anymore, because they realize that the team is becoming a high-performance team and they don't want to be part of that. They'll leave. They'll leave on your own. You don't even have to fire them. They'll leave on their own. You don't ever have to worry about bots. He's either going to perform better than the mean before, or he's going to self-eliminate. It's not an issue. No discipline required. It's remarkable.
So the metrics changes occur for everybody in this team, not just the high performers, not just the poor performers. And so the process of getting those metrics understood, maybe at the front line and or goal oriented at the front line, what do you do? How do you manage that?
You just ask them, what do you want to measure? You have to measure something. Give me something that you want to measure. The trouble isn't with the frontline guy. You can ask every frontline guy, anyone, guy or gal. I'm using the term guy. It's guy or gal. Ask anyone on the front line, if you were king for a day, what would you do different? They'll give you a list longer than you could be bothered to write down. They all have ideas. They know what they have to do, but they don't even get past the frontline supervisor. Because for the frontline supervisor, now it's work. It's trouble. He's got to figure it out. He's got to vet the ideas. Not all of them are good. Not all of them are economic. Out of that whole litany of lists, there might only be a few, but there are going to be gems in there. It's work for them. So they don't really like it. So when we start with a project, asking the front line is the easy part. It's getting the frontline supervisors to step aside and to suspend their disbelief for a little while till they see it work. And that's really the challenge. At the front end, that's really the challenge.
I would echo that in some of the acquisitions that I've done. You know, one of the key things, of course, is doing a field review, but I make the effort to sit and talk with right from the guy at the wellhead to guy sitting in the office. What would you do differently, or what ideas do you have to improve things around here, given project or the properties up for sale? And most people will tell you. I mean, if you don't come across as negative, but a lot of people do have ideas. They just never get a chance to express them.
I remember a meeting that you and I had, Pete, 20 years ago. I don't know how long ago. We started working.
I can't remember.
Yeah, we were going to. I was going to do some work at a heavy oil facility that you were operating, and our biggest concern was how are we going to get the frontline leadership on site. We didn't have any discussion about the hourly guys.
Yeah,
that was fine.
Yeah,
but we did a whole bunch of prep to make sure that the frontline guys were going to be on site, because there's a couple key minds in there that we needed on site, and we didn't want to disenfranchise them in any way. And so we spent a lot of time prepping for the frontline supervisors.
Yeah.
And it was the same thing.
I would think that's a standard reaction or standard activity that you guys would look at, your forefront would look at, because the guy that already has the frontline workers is thinking, I'm at risk here. And they need to buy in, they need to understand. And of course, if the team is working better, then that looks good on them. So how do you get that? How do you get that point across?
So when they see the win, when they start seeing the wins, it's easy because they all know what they have to deliver. But when we come in and we start working with an organization, we're a threat to them because they see it as that we're identifying failures that they have. But the problem is, it's not really their failure. They were taught by their supervisors, or they were taught by the leadership courses that they went to find people doing stuff wrong and fix it. as opposed to having them find the stuff that they're doing right and promoting it and recognizing it. And once they realize that there's a fundamental switch between those two, it's really remarkable.
So instead of telling them what not to do, or what to do, what to do.
Tell them what results you want.
Yes.
Ask them for the results. I remember there was a real tough supervisor. This was in a sawmill in British Columbia. And he was kind of hard-nosed, and he made a stand pretty clear to me when I was on board. And I gave him a challenge, and we set up kind of a test. And the rule was he wasn't allowed to say anything.
When?
Nothing.
What? To
his guys on shift.
What?
He wasn't allowed to talk to his guys on shift.
Yeah.
But he had to provide feedback in written form on a graph on performance. That was all he was allowed to do. And then he said, if it doesn't work, I'm out of here. I won't bug you anymore. But if it works, we walk down this path. And he laughed. He laughed and laughed. He goes, are you kidding me? Let's try it. 1 week. But you have to keep your word. No discipline, no redirection, no positive reinforcement, no negative reinforcement, nothing. Just the numbers on the graph at the end of the day.
And?
It worked. It's going to work. See, this was remarkable.
Why did it work? Why did it work? In your Bible?
There's a stat that people don't understand. And that is, I think the number is 96.7%, but I can be wrong, but it's in the 90s. If you get a metric that's based on your performance,
yes,
on something that you do,
yeah,
and you start getting that, 96% of the population will change your behavior within, 10 data points? I got to get these numbers right. But everyone's going to change within 10 data points. It's just going to happen. You can't help it. You're going to change the way you think. It's going to change the way you act. When I gave him the challenge, I was 97% positive I was going to be successful. He had no idea. Because if someone's getting feedback on their performance every day, they're going to change their performance. 100%.
So that was written feedback that they got once a day.
In the form of a digit, of a number.
Of a number.
Of a number.
That's the key.
Yeah. They just got a number.
So they were bored.
Once a day. Once a day. At the end of the day, they got a number. And he wrote it down on a white piece.
Were his numbers there? Were his numbers?
Absolutely. They're based on...
You saw the numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're based on objective performance.
Right. Yeah. So...
It was guaranteed.
So the receiver of that number also knew that
he didn't have a clue what was going on.
No.
Not a clue what was going on.
He didn't know. He didn't notice a change in behavior.
This is how many board feet you processed today. Boom. That's it. Board feet per shift.
And
that's it.
They started getting better.
And can you imagine what the supervisor did? Freak. Absolutely freaked. Are you kidding me? I've been yelling at these guys forever. They just ignored me. He was a screamer, and everyone had become desensitized to screaming.
Right.
So he didn't have any voice. He couldn't scream any louder. He screamed as loud as he possibly could. Wasn't going anywhere. People just had to live with it. And now he shut up, and he just got a number. Really? He's going to shut up?
So he's giving him objective measures now.
Giving him an objective number, an objective measure.
Yeah.
And now it has to be a fair measure. So it has to be seen by the receiver.
Yeah.
As a fair objective measure.
Yeah. So something they did every day, board feet processed.
And it works. Most powerful leadership tool out there, we don't use it. And the reason why we don't use it is because people have been conditioned that numbers get used as weapons.
Right.
Oh, you didn't hit your 80%, you didn't hit your 8,000 units today? You're going to get a talking to. You're going to get some discipline. So they're conditioned to that. So they hate the metrics. So people fight metrics in the workplace, frontline performance. They fight them. You just have to get over that. So I spent an inordinate amount of time telling frontline leaderships, you know what? For the next 2 weeks, we're just not going to give anyone crap. We're going to walk away from them for 2 weeks. After 2 weeks or 3 weeks, if you want to give them crap, have at it. But for the next 2 weeks, let's just start.
And you quickly get results that they recognize.
Yeah. If you can do it on individual performance, 100%.
Yeah.
You're going to get objective result. You're going to get objective results 97% of the time. It's that powerful. And I don't know why it's not taught. I don't know why that stat and that reality isn't taught in leadership classes. I just don't get it. It's like we're ignoring the most powerful tool we have. Now, it comes with a bit of a price.
Which is?
When the guys first get the numbers, because they're conditioned to getting the feedback because of the numbers,
Yeah.
they hate it.
Yeah.
They absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
I don't need no number.
That's why
You're a stinking number.
But
that's why they give up on it. That's why leaders give up on it. But if you just persevere and you get past those first 10 data points, they're going to ask for the numbers after that. If they're not going to get in trouble, they stop being negative.
Yeah.
Then they become neutral. And then they're curious because we all want to achieve. We're an evolutionary being. I want to do better. If I'm going to run, if I want to lose some weight, I'm going to start running. I want to see how fast and how far I'm running every day.
Yeah.
If you take that away from me, what's my motivation? How do I keep focused on it?
You're going to record it. And you're going to plot it. You're going to measure it.
Absolutely.
All the time. So part of your process.
Yeah. It's the same thing in our mind doesn't process work any differently if we're being paid or not, whether it's a hobby or no. We still operate the same way. We have the same DNA. It still works the exact same way.
That's really important comment. Yeah. So the other key, though, to your sawmill story was, well, actual evidence was he added out the numbers. He probably got a negative reaction for the first few days, but he wasn't allowed to say anything or do anything, which he's probably had to hold himself back from that reaction.
Really, really tough, particularly for a guy that's a screamer.
Yeah.
Really, really tough to do because we get trained to fix poor performance. And you can bet that with all the numbers he was giving out, there were days that there was poor performance.
Yeah.
You just got to shut up. It's really tough to do.
Yeah.
But like go back. It's easy to do it when you think about doing a sport, like picking up jogging or something.
Yeah.
Or golf. It doesn't really matter what the sport is. When we start working out, we have bad days.
Yeah.
We're not at the top all the time. Let it go.
No, it's always going to
let it go.
Yeah.
And just imagine if you're the supervisor and you're handing out numbers every day and people are kind of curious about the numbers. So we're past the 10 days and they're curious about the numbers. And there's a day that the numbers are really low for someone. And you walked up to the graph and you just stood there and said nothing. Like you literally said nothing. We're just looking at the graph. The guy that's responsible for those numbers, what do you think he's thinking?
He's going to get crap or something's going to happen.
Well, shit. Like he's concerned.
Yeah.
He feels bad because he knows he's underperforming. He feels bad. 10-1, he's going to walk up to you. So you don't have to go up to him and give him grief. He's going to walk up to you and start explaining, I don't know what's going on. I'm doing the same thing, but the machine's not reacting the same way. The chemical reaction or something has changed in the process that I don't know about. Or I'm just having a really hard day. Or my kid is in the hospital. I don't know, whatever. He's going to start telling you what the issue is. You don't even have to ask. And then you can deal with it. It's easy as pie. I'm doing the exact same process before, but it's not working. Well, there's something different in the process. Let's get an engineer over here, or let's get some help and figure out what's going on. And suddenly you're on the same page to make it better. I have a kid that's in the hospital. He got called to the hospital at 2 a.m. last night and your head's not in the game. Okay, hang on a sec. We got systems and processes to deal with that. We have a employee assistance program of some sort, or maybe you shouldn't be at work, or when you take a couple of days off, get your family straight, and we'll figure it out. I don't know, whatever it is, but you're problem solving instantly, as opposed to there giving the guy grief saying, why are your numbers so poor? And he becomes super defensive, and you're not really getting anywhere. You're in an aggressive stance. It's magical how it flips out.
I guess I have an analogy to what you just said. My son is a national team cyclist, and they're high performance, and they're always monitoring their performance. And he gets angry when his performance on a given day. But if you ask him what happened or what, let him calm down a bit, he starts problem solving. Like he's motivated to beat whatever he did that day, but he also has been figuring out why. Maybe there's a mechanical problem on the bike. Maybe the winds were terrible, or he didn't hydrate properly. Whatever, so could have been whatever. But he's or he had a bad night's sleep. Something as simple as that, and it just wasn't in it. So yeah, that's great.
It's real cool. I have 2 kids that are high performance athletes as well, and they're swimmers, and they'd have the same thing. They'd have something in their swim cap literally on their head, monitoring everything they do, and they would look for feedback on every 50 meters or 100 meters. We're not talking about one data point
for a day.
Yeah, we're talking about a 50-meter swim or 100-meter swim, and they're looking at their data to see if the changes they're making in the stroke was having the impact that they thought it would have.
So quite a feedback loop.
It's insane. It's absolutely.
Do you see that in some of your workplaces that you've been involved with?
The tightest I ever got it to was 12 minutes. Is that people were getting feedback on a 12-minute cycle. Usually in the workplace, when we do the stuff, if we can do it on a quarter of a day, so they get 4 data points a day, is pretty remarkable. And then again, but you have the extreme where, and certainly in sawmills, you see that a lot. They'll have a linear board feet metric that's just showing all the time.
Yeah.
And so guys start knowing, at 10 a.m. they want to know where they are, and 11 a.m. they know where they are, so they can kind of watch it continuously. But where a data point is kind of spit out that people can look at, 12 minutes is about the fastest that I've seen.
Do you find that, like given control rooms and all sorts of industries are just full of screens and having some kind of indicators at the top, do people pay attention to that, or do they tend to go, management put this in and I don't like it?
So this is why you have them participate and choose to do it.
Yes.
And so if they pick the metric, they're going to watch it. If you put it in front of them and say, hey, then you can do that, but you have to be careful. You have to engage them in that process.
Right. Makes sense.
But, we think like, we're in I am in control rooms all the time in my work. And really when you talk to them and dig into the process, they need all the metrics, they need all the processes, and they're managing all that kind of stuff. But the reality in their mind's eye, they're really operating on very few variables. The human condition only allows very few variables that we start playing and working.
Yeah.
And so we might need all that information for troubleshooting, but on an operating basis, it's remarkably small. I often use the example of back to the video games.
Yeah.
People play video games, so they're holding a controller. The controller might have, 4 to 12 buttons on it.
Right.
And every button you can click or double click or click and hold in combination with any other buttons.
Lots of permutations.
Endless. And now those decisions have to be made on
instantly,
fractional of seconds. So while failure playing the video game doesn't really mean anything, you start the level over again or whatnot.
No consequences.
No consequences associated with it. In the workplace, there is no job that we require that complexity and that speed of response. They just don't exist. Now, a lot of the decisions on the job, you make a mistake that could be catastrophic. And so you have to be thoughtful in the execution and pretty considerate. But I would argue that the job of playing a video game is orders of magnitude more complex than most jobs that our frontline workers have. I believe it. So the problem isn't in skill.
Yeah.
The problem is in will.
Yeah.
It's that people don't have the will. They have a boring job. It's simple to execute. They're bored. They don't get any feedback, and they lose the will. They have the skill to do what's required, but they just lose the will. So to roll it back, if we can gamify it, make it fun, make it challenging, that they can be rewarded for small incremental gains that they get, not with money, but rewarded nonetheless, some kind of positive recognition, they will deliver. We can turn it into that video game. Most of the time, the vast majority of times, it's not a matter of skill.
Let me throw one more at you. Have you worked in high performance environments that were already high? In other words, I would imagine you get called in where there's issues and probably easy to identify and metrics that management who brings you in wants adjusted and affected. But have you also been brought into really good companies that really are working effectively in the field and still see improvement?
Yeah, very, very. I had. The irony is that we tend to be hired. If you look at that, over the last 30 years that I've been doing this work, we tend to get hired by the better companies, the ones that operate better. And it's because, well, the interesting part is that as you get better, it's tougher to improve. And so you have a son that's a high performance athlete. When he first started cycling, there might have been 10 people in the class with one coach. Or even more. And I know with my kids, they're competitive swimmers. There's probably 20 kids in the lane with
exactly.
Someone that's barely a coach.
Yeah.
They swim competitively. And then as you go up and up and up, that ratio becomes smaller.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when my kids hit the national level, well, we had a swim coach and we had nutrition
and physio
and a physio, and it's like, suddenly,
and a mental coach usually.
Yeah. And so suddenly you have this whole cadre of people supporting the one athlete. And so quite often in organizations, they get that too. And so I was in one organization and they got measured by Price Waterhouse against their peer group. So they knew what all their numbers were, and then the other ones were all anonymized, but they could see where they fit. And we were number 8 in the world. And it's like, they're number 8 in the world. Well, you show up there. All the maintenance guys are wearing collared shirts and button downs, they all have clean hands. And you think, when I first went there, it's like, there's nothing I can do here. Like, what could I possibly do? All they did is walk around and take oil samples and making sure that everything was running well, because everything always ran. And I remember this was really early in my career, and a colleague of mine I was talking to about it, he goes, trust the science, Wouter. Just go back and trust the science. Like, don't question yourself. So we put the same science together. Well, when we were done, we were number 3.
Wow.
Number 3 in the world.
Yeah.
That was hard. That was hard work. It took everyone to be focused. And, but it was fun. And we tracked it and we watched it. And it was a great win. It was a great win for the site. We all shared in that win. It's exciting as get up. But I was scared, because when you walk through that, you don't see anything. The reality is, no one, expert could walk in there and see nothing. I certainly knew nothing about their industry. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't point anything out. But they all knew what the next little bit of margin was. They all knew what that was, and so they all chased it.
You've worked in unionized and non-unionized environments as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And still got results.
Absolutely. DNA is the same.
Yeah.
The DNA is the same whether you in unionized or ununionized environments. Sometimes you get union leadership that has a school of thought that says, we battle any initiative that comes out of management and that kind of thing. But what has always happened is they realize that this is a win for the employees. No one wants to be robotic in their job.
Right.
And when you get asked for your opinion and you can get involved in your environment and make something bigger or better, at the end of the day, people like it. And so I've gotten lots of lines like, I'm not here to help you out at all. But if I was going to, this is what I tell you. And then they'd spew everything out. And ultimately they'd walk down the path because they see the win for themselves. And so I always ask the union leadership. We always do our presentation. We talk about it. We're always very, very transparent. I'm a believer that there's a role for In some organizations, there's absolutely a role for a union. Some companies should have them. I think in some companies that are well run and really responsive, I don't think they're necessarily necessary. But there are places that they're absolutely necessary. You better respect them. And if you respect them, they'll respect you. But at the end of the day, the process is the same.
Yeah.
You respect the people, use their minds, employ their minds, participate, and they will do so voluntarily.
Yeah.
See, if you were poor, you didn't have any money, you were poor, I could probably buy your back. You know, if you got to feed your wife and your kids, and at the end of the day, I could buy your back. But I can never buy your mind. That's something that we volunteer. And if you take that attitude in your workplace, people, I might be buying their back, but they're going to volunteer their mind. If this organization is going to be successful, I need them to participate. And you go in there with that attitude, I'm asking them to volunteer their mind. And there's going to be a quid pro quo. They're going to be more satisfied in their job. It's a win-win. Everyone wins.
That's the voluntary engagement.
Volunteering
curve. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the only way that you're going to create a high-performance organization.
And so I guess to wrap up a bit here, the 31% is really not got any voluntary engagement in terms of those statistics. So your opportunity to go double comes with the voluntary engagement, or even higher.
Double or triple.
Wow.
You know, it's
and
it's a shame. It's a condemnation of the modern workplace that people are working out at 31% of where they're working at.
Yeah.
It's terrible. If you bought a piece of equipment and it was operating at 31% of design,
like a robot.
Yeah, it'd be terrible. I mean, you get the engineers out, you'd be calling the vendor, you'd be complaining about what's going on there, and you would fix the problem. And yet we tolerate employees working at 31%. And not only that, but we create management systems which perpetuate it at 31%. And then we wonder why people hate work. Not everyone, but why we have so many people that hate work.
Right.
It's completely unnecessary.
So
Failure of management.
So with the voluntary engagement, people see the value of what they do, I suppose, and start to feel like they own that process or own that piece of equipment, or it's theirs. So run it like you own it.
It doesn't run it like you own it. It doesn't matter what the piece of equipment is. You know, people are great bowlers. Really? Taking a ball and knocking down a bunch of pins, and yet they have great engagement. Knocking a small ball around a golf course, 8,000 meters. I don't know how long is a golf course.
7,200 yards. It's a long one.
You know, 7,200 yards. Like, really? That's really the wind? And yet we pay thousands of dollars to do it. How many people go out fishing and then don't even eat the fish?
Yeah.
You know, like, why? What's really the purpose? And then we get paid to do something. And we hate it. Providing food and sustenance to the community. Some value added that we all benefit from.
Thank you for watching the Run It Like You Own It podcast. Visit forefrontperformance.com or find us on social media at forefront.performance.